Thanks, Rachel. Okay, well, great. Well, thanks for that. So, hello everyone. I'm Simon Bourne. I'm Program Director for the Midlands Decision Support Network, and I thought it would be nice to just spend a few minutes telling you about the Chief Analysts Group that's recently been formed. So you've got quite a packed agenda, so I don't want to take up too much time. But what I'll do is I'll give you a bit of an overview. So what we see as the group's purpose, maybe some of its principles, the way that the group is starting to work together. And then I'll just ask you a question as well before us finishing up. So hopefully most of you will have seen the National Intelligence Function Guidance and its associated toolkit. I know it's not been formally released, but it's certainly been shared with most parties. But anyway, the idea is, as I'm sure you know, that each of our systems intelligence functions are going to be led by or are led by a chief analyst, so a professional lead who's going to oversee the development of that intelligence function. And what's happened recently is all the chief analysts from across the Midlands region have come together to form a chief analyst group. And that group meets on a monthly basis and has got a number of purposes they've defined themselves. So partly all the people in those roles are starting to work together to think about, what are some of their shared challenges? Is there anything that they can do across the Midlands region to develop common solutions or develop some shared positions on matters of particular interest? But there's also a significant element that the chief analysts are trying to do in terms of sharing what their work programs are. So, increasingly individual systems are starting to put together strategic analytical work programs, and the idea is that they share those with one another, identify potential opportunities for collaboration, coordination, but also start to, I suppose, involve one another in the working processes to some extent. So sharing some of the ideas, sharing maybe potential analytical approaches, bouncing around potential approaches to methodology, and then at the sort of further down the pathway, and thinking about things like how do we share code with one another, how do we share outputs with one another as well. And the idea is, and I think this links quite well to what you were saying about RAP just a second ago, Rachel. Some of it's about peer review, some of it's about sort of maximising opportunities for learning, but also it's about driving up standards, minimising unnecessary duplication, or all those sorts of things really. The group are also starting to think about, are there potential shared standards or common working practices across the network where appropriate? And clearly the other bit as well is around shaping the MDSM support programme. So, the idea is that group are going to be a really valuable means of helping to shape, what it is we offer for analysts and decision makers across the region. So making sure that it really clearly addresses their needs. So the group's pretty early in its development. So they've only had about 3 sessions so far, but I think, the idea is that it's going to be, clearly a sort of a protected space, a group of peers who come together and and sort of start to collaborate on increasingly on their analytical programs. I think the idea, clearly the group are trying to work towards a principle of sharing by default and sort of collaborating by default. But as I say, the group's in early stages. In terms of the membership, what I'll do is I'll post who currently attends in the chat box. So a very picture. Some individuals have been sort of formally appointed to chief analyst roles. Others are sort of de facto taking on those roles on behalf of their systems, at least at the moment. And a few others are actually out to advert at the moment. You might have seen we've posted a few of the chief analyst roles in the Teams channel recently. So I'll post that in just a second. So the way the group works at the moment is that they meet on once a month, and we're alternating between themed meetings, so where the group are looking at a particular theme and then sharing ideas or experiences or insights and potentially identifying opportunities for joint action. So there was we had an initial meeting focused on matrix working across organisations and some of the challenges that chief analysts face in trying to, bring together diverse groups of analytical teams to work on some common matters of interest across the system. And we also, every other month, we also have knowledge exchange meetings where some of our chief analysts are essentially sharing their work at any stage of development and just offering a bit of peer review, and also starting to collaborate and think about where, what sort of analytical questions might be, worthy of focus in that particular topic area. And we had one just a few days ago, which was focused on where the topic was focused on ambulance services and analysis in relation to that. So there's just a potted summary, and I don't want to just talk at you for ages. So I wanted to ask you a question, really, if I could, just using the Menti. I'd be really interested in your thoughts on where you think that chief analyst group should focus their efforts. So I wonder if, Rachel, if you wouldn't mind moving on to the next slide so people could offer their ideas and reflections, then that'd be really helpful.
Yeah, I've already moved it on, and there's
Great.
already been a couple of responses, so we can look at those. People will need time to think, won't they?
Of course, so, yeah. I think people if take a few minutes, digest what I've just said.
Yeah. But in terms of, I was just thinking, I think people will be, if they don't already know, and you're going to share the information, I think people would like to know who these people were. So these are the ICB appointed chief analysts, aren't they? So some people will probably be very familiar with the names that you're going to share later, and some less so, if maybe they've been appointed from outside.
I'll do that now, but as I say, some have been formally appointed into the chief analyst role. Others are sort of taking on that role in the interim while their system sort of clarifies their plans for their intelligence function, and a few are out to advert at the moment. But I've just posted it here.
Okay. You put it in the chat?
Sure have.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll read it out because not everybody can see the chat. So for Birmingham and Black Country, it's Anthony Nichols. For BSOL, that's out for, sorry about the abbreviations, but that's obviously Solihull. Is out for advert at the moment, so look out for that if you're interested in that role. Derbyshire, we have Craig Cook. Coventry and Warwickshire, we have Steve Jarman Davis. Hereford and Worcester, we have Connor Price. And Oliver Hand. Is that a dual role, or is it? Yeah, I think there's obviously those two names there. Lincolnshire, we have Katie Thomas, and LLR out for advert. Northants, Paul Birch. Nottinghamshire, Nottingham, we have Jack Rodber, who's been here on at these huddles quite a lot, and NHS-R Scott Link. STW, Craig Kinston, and Staffordshire and Stoke, we've got Andy Lavelle. So all of these names from time to time come to these huddles, and I think they're all part of the Midlands Analyst Network. So there you go.
Rachel, LLR have just appointed, and I think they're appointees on the. Oh. Janine.
Thanks, Peter, and I'm sat here looking really scruffy with COVID in a hoodie, so thank you.
Well, I'm looking scruffy, and I have no excuse apart from that. I'm very cold. Hi, Janine. How are you doing? Congratulations.
Good, thank you.
Yeah.
I put recently recruited because I wasn't sure if you were sharing yet, Janine.
I'm leaving in less than a month. I'm sharing, Simon.
Fabulous.
Have I given something away? Oh no.
That's fantastic. Well done, Janine. So update your list, Simon. There you go. Okay, so now I've been wittering on. I've got there's a message from Zoe. What does Zoe say? Okay, she's sharing the advert, or the advert is being shared on the chat. If people can't see the chat, I'll share that afterwards. for analyst posts, chief analyst posts, which are out to advert at the moment. Okay, so I'll share my screen so Simon can actually see what he's supposed to be talking to. Here we go. I won't put me on it this time as a huge distraction, so you can just focus on what's in front of you. So do you want to you can just pick things that you want to talk to, Simon?
Sure. I just need to read it first.
Yeah, sure. I will let you do that, and I won't move it while you're trying to read it.
Yeah, absolutely. First point, yes, you're right. It's the ICB Chief Analyst. Yeah, I mean, just loads of these things that are coming through around professionalization, around workforce development, around reducing duplication. Those are things that have come up in discussions already, and I think are high up their agenda. Do you want to scroll down a little bit so I can see some more? Yeah, not getting dragged into the day-to-day BI stuff. So how do you separate that sort of strategic analytical function so the urgent doesn't crowd out the important? Absolutely. Yeah, great. I mean, look, I'm not gonna. I probably won't say a great deal about this. I think what I'd like to do is share this back with the group and as just some immediate reactions. But clearly, I've just told you about it in a few minutes. You kind of want a little bit more time to reflect as well. And I've put some of the names there in the chat. But clearly, if you don't already have a link with those individuals in your system, just drop me a note. I'll put my email address and I can connect you with them as well.
So I think it's important that people can understand what the relationship or the potential relationship is between them as analysts in these systems and the chief analyst. So again, that's understanding what that role is and how they can relate to them if they need to and if it's relevant. So that because I guess some of these relationships will be different than others. So okay, well I'm going to stop sharing now then, Simon, because this is clearly an area of interest, but I'll share these with you after. Please. And then you can share them back to the group, and then that can help them sort of in your next meeting. I don't know when that is.
About a month's time. But yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you.
I'll do that. Okay, I've stopped sharing. Are there any other comments people would like to make about the Chief Analysts Group?
Yeah, please. I don't know, are people able to raise their hands or very happy to take any reflections or ideas?
Stephen.
Steve, go ahead.
I was just going to respond to one of the points that somebody made in the chat about our mentee about ambulance service work. So the two presentations we had, one was from Anthony Nichols, who'd been doing some work on the relationship between response times and morbidity or mortality of patients. And Mai Stafford joined us from the Health Foundation. She'd also been doing some work on response times and its implications, or rather handover times and their implications for response times. Really useful presentations. We talked a little bit afterwards about a further piece of work we might do, and this does then tie into the question on mentee, because we talked about maybe getting together with colleagues from the ambulance service to work through the scope of that piece of work. So that's our intention, to bring them into the conversation and see how they feel about the potential project that we're wondering we think might have some value, which is incidentally about conveyance thresholds. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen. That's helpful extra bit of detail. Anyone else want to come in at all? Any other thoughts or reflections people want to share? No? Okay, well, drop me a note afterwards if you've got any other thoughts, and I'm happy to act as a conduit through to that group, but likewise, clearly happy if you want to contact people direct in your system as well. As I say, the group's in its early stages, but I think the the aspiration is that it could be a really powerful mechanism, A, for sort of collaborating across the region and sharing and working together, but also a really powerful voice for analysts, both regionally and nationally, because, you know, ultimately represents systems approximating to about a quarter of the English NHS. So potentially a really powerful advocacy voice for analysts across the country as well.
Okay, thank you, Simon. That was a really helpful update. But before we move on, I've got Peter with his hand up. Peter.
Sorry, I just wanted to emphasise the point Simon was making. I mean, there is a sort of grand plan, whether it'll ever come to pass, that floats behind some of the things that are going on at the moment. But we've now got a group of, or we're moving towards having a group of chief analysts for the Midlands that can be the analytical leadership group for the Midlands. We've got the Southwest region that's now decided it's going to adopt the DSN model. So we will soon have a Southwest equivalent. At that point, we've got an identified group of chief analysts who between them are covering 40% of the NHS population. Got conversations going on, starting to happen in other regions as well. If we can get to the point fairly quickly where we've got this kind of network of chief analysts across the ICSs, and we've established the right kind of culture and some of the mechanisms that can support collaboration and knowledge sharing, then we're on the cusp of releasing something extremely powerful and something that's grown from within the system rather than being imposed through the hierarchy, which strikes me as essential in the kind of world we're heading into. So I do think this is a really important development, and I'm very excited that the group's getting together now, and that these posts are being established, and that the kind of principles that they've settled upon as to drive their work seem to be the right ones to me.
Thank you, Peter. Any final words, Simon, before we move on?
No, that's it really. Just as I say, if you want to find out more about it, you want to either connect with me or with someone or with whoever's representing your local system, then please do.
Excellent. Thanks very much. Okay, so I will now move on to Mohammed. Mohammed is going to talk to us about the NHS-R conference, which is imminent, and he has a couple of questions for you in advance of that. I'm hoping he's in the room. Otherwise, I will just go ahead and talk to you about the NHS-R conference and ask you some questions. Mohammed, are you there?
Yes, Rachel. If you could
Excellent.
Just put the Menti questions and show me the responses, please, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Okay. So I've moved it on. The first question is about R and how much you use R, and I will just share my screen so you can see the responses. So we ask this question from time to time, and so I'm just looking at the results now, and I'm going to let you talk to them, Mohammed.
That's great. Well, I will talk to them in a bit. I think I just want to go through the three slides so that I can see what people their responses are.
Okay, so do you want me to go through each of the three questions before we talk to them? Okay, so I'll just let people have another few seconds on the first slide. So that's how often do you use R in your work? And the second question is, how would you describe the current level of adoption of R in your organisation? So not necessarily on a personal basis, someone just made a comment there actually, but organisationally and maybe within your team, what is the level of adoption of R? So is it the need for R is not perceived, you are aware but passive, preliminary interest to learn more, evaluating R for the cost benefits? I think some of these you could use one or two of them, maybe trialing R, testing R at a small scale. No one so far has rejected R. But there's quite a lot of adoption, which I think is very encouraging. And again, also encouraging discontinued after adoption isn't being presented there. So I think there's a good picture there. I'll go on to the third of 3 questions before I hand back to Mohammed. So that, what's this?
I don't recall this one.
That's amazing. Okay, I'm going to move on.
Well, fine.
I think it was just.
Yeah.
Oh, this one. Yeah. I have no idea whether that's. I think we've been not hacked as such, but that was interesting. I'm going to see what that one was. So this do you want people to answer this one, which is about the NHS-R? Okay. Okay, so you put a time limit on that one.
I didn't mean to, but there you go.
all this functionality. I mean, it's quite amazing. So, okay, I'm going to. Shall I go back to?
Yeah, I'll share. So thank you for your responses, by the way. That is very helpful to kind of get a flavour of what's kind of in the room. Let me just see if I can. So look, this is completely on the fly, but it's really responding to the things I've seen on screen. So this is the industry conference on R, where the NHS-R community was invited. It's not so much to tell you about the NHS-R community. I just wanted you to see the organisations in the corporate sector that are using R. So the Financial Times, obviously academia use R, Pfizer use R, portfolio optimization, insurance soft companies use R, the BBC use R, the Bank of England use R. Let me give you some other ones. Samaritans use R. The water industry is using R. The Dogs Trust is using R. Okay. The point of showing this is there is not a sector that is out there that is not using R in a kind of considered fashion as part of their data science toolkit and kind of toolbox. So I just wanted you to look. This is available on the internet. If people want to see it more closely, I can share it. I suppose just the other thing to mention is one of the presentations in the conference was actually about the NHS-R about communities and the importance of having a community supporting a particular data science kind of philosophy and approach. So the NHS-R community is underpinned by 2 value systems, the NHS value system and the open source value system. And that is quite a kind of strong foundation to build anything on, really. Peter's point about this being bottom up and not top down is actually very well embedded in the community. So what are the sort of things that happen in the community? Well, sorry to skip through this. Well, first point to point out is, there was a previous Huddle on the Goldacre report. The Goldacre report has many recommendations, and a few of them are can explicitly mention the potential role of the NHS-R community, what it's done. And I think that's a remarkable testimony, really, to the work that the community has done. And I'm just a voice, really, though the hard work is done by lots of other people. In fact, Chris Bealey's on the line, who's one of our kind of key champions and a senior fellow of the community. So for a policy strategic document to mention the community is a really big deal. And so what I'm perhaps saying to colleagues on the line is that we do want every analyst in the health service, whether they are novices with R or the kind of newbies with R, that they should feel welcome to join the community. The community is very welcoming, has a very broad philosophy, and really does want to help people as much as they can. Now, I'll give you an example of the help. Just do the conference in a minute, but here's the help. So if you go onto our Slack channel, at about 11:02 on a particular day, somebody put out a technical question, and I think within a few moments, so the timestamp disappears. Between a few moments, they had several people replying And in the end, actually, the search on the internet proved not useful, but the NHS-R Slack actually answered the question very quickly. Now, this capability of having crowdsourced knowledge, crowdsourced support that is done in a friendly, welcoming way, this is just absolutely, I purr with delight when I see these things, because the notion that analysts need to work in isolation using closed tools is just very, very old hat, really. This is kind of a really powerful way for not just for technical support, for peer support, for knowledge dissemination, and so on. I think the other thing to point out is, I'll just go back a bit. Our calendar has an annual conference. So in 2018, we kind of started, but the first conference with 120 people attended. It was face-to-face. The next was 300. Then we went online. And this year's conference, which is in November, as many of you know, is in Edgbaston. So it's for the Midlands, at least, it's as close as it gets to our backyard, really. And it would be great to see people avail of the opportunity of experiencing the joy of learning and networking and so on in person. Of course, many people will come online, but the in-person experience, I think, is still felt to have the edge, really, over the things. But we have an NHS-R Academy. Rachel, call me to time, by the way, as soon as it is the case. We offer training and development. We offer titles for people who've have made commitments to open source type ideas, and we fund some solutions. I'll just show you a bit about the titles. People can apply to be a fellow, a senior fellow, be a friend, be a champion. And this is to recognise, really, that communities work really by the contribution of people in the community. And our job is to support those contributions and highlight them. Okay, well, I'll take a pause. Just to say, we've got over 50 speakers at the conference, some amazing people. I don't really have time to highlight them all, but the stars of our world are also coming, our studio are also coming to the conference.
Mohammed, I put my hand up, not because I wanted you to be quiet. Yeah, a couple more minutes. How to take my hand down? But really just because I know that a lot of people in the analyst network and who are on the call today aren't NHS. So although it's NHS-R, community, we're very much talking to other partners as well, so local authority as well, and others.
So the NHS-R community has two invisible pluses on it. One, to recognise that the NHS is not an island, and so it includes local government, social care, public health, other government sectors, and academia. And the R also has a plus on it. Indeed, the conference this year will actually have a Python track. One of our things now is kind of to consider the potential rebranding of the community to recognise really the commitment to open source and the wider open source tools. But the NHS bit has a big plus on it, which eventually I think would want to make less, not invisible, but actually make it explicit. So it's very welcoming to anybody, actually.
Okay, that's what I thought. I just wanted to make it clear because obviously the title kind of might confuse people as to who is very welcome in this community. I think you have to go to the register for the conference, which is a very simple process. You do have to register to be part of NHS-R, which is also a simple process. Once you have, it's just a one click away from all of these opportunities. And among the speakers, we've got Peter Spilsbury, that you may have heard of. he's going to be there at Edgbaston. The Midlands decision. Sorry.
Yeah, you do have to join. That's once you join, then all the events are available to you, especially if you are in the list I've identified. So each tile is an event, and you can click. And we've got loads of workshops, loads of and the actual conference. So you do have to pick. It's like the train tickets. You do have to pick the right ticket. And the key conference things are here, which is 16th and 17th. So you can attend online or you can attend in person. And there's an outline of the programme and the list of speakers that I come on as well.
It'd be great to see everybody, like you say, Mohammed. We'll be going, I'll be going, so there'll be...
Rachel, maybe, I don't know, somebody's hand is up. Jeez.
Might it have been?
Someone did, Rach.
Okay, whoever's got their hand up, please do talk.
Hi, it's Kelly from Lincolnshire.
Hi Kelly, go for it.
So my query is, so I've got a few members of the team who are doing our training at the moment. It's something we do want to progress, but ICT are refusing to install our studio. Does anybody have any cases or anything that they can share with us to help our case with ICT to get it as a recognised programme?
So, Chris, you're on the line. Can you hear me, Chris Beanley?
Sorry, yes, I am. I can't access the chat though for some reason. Yes, I'm sure there's something in our Slack. What was NHS-X have published something on this very subject. I can dig it out, but I can't put it in the chat because I can't access the chat. But we do have something in the Slack, I'm sure of it.
If you share that with me after, Chris, I'll make sure I share it with everybody on the call.
Yeah.
Zoe's got a point to make as well. Zoe?
Well, to Chris, I'm on the right workspace, so you can share it with me and I can share it back. But I also, there was somebody else wanted to, because it's across England and probably the 4 nations, where some organisations need these kind of sort of like justifications for having access to things. And so we've started to pull together just our experiences and what we suggest is required for these tools. And it's not just R, there's also GitHub access and Python associated software. But I'll try and find the link to that, which is, it might be blocked because it's GitHub, but that's where we're trying to pull together all of our work to try and bring it, to make it easier to put forward these cases. The strange thing is some organisations like Chris and mine allow quite a lot of this stuff, but we don't stand out, I don't think, when it comes to other organisations that are peers to us, where they go, oh yeah, well they're a big one, and we're a mental health and community health trust. So we're not a national body and we have lots of access to these things because our security has deemed it okay for us as data scientists to have it. So we're trying to bring knowledge together. So also what you're going through, if you wouldn't mind also feeding back, because that can help, because you won't be alone with this.
Sure.
Thank you.
That's really useful. Thanks for the question, Kelly. Janine?
Zoe, I was going to say with that, you're putting it on GitHub, but you also acknowledge that some of the organisations that are struggling to access R installed struggle to access GitHub. Is the NHS Futures platform somewhere where some of this could go as well?
Yes, that's a very good point. We were talking about it today at the technical advisory group because of that thing with the training, because we've got these training elements that we've created. I've done some with Sharingham, which is a particular package, but I think what it does is it creates some HTML that our VPNs block, so people can't view them. And we didn't think of that as a solution. So I will try and investigate that to share it in a more accessible way for people to see, at least as an interim, while we get people access.
I am
advocacy.
making a huge assumption that everybody's got access to NHS Futures, but I can't think of any absolute barriers to that.
Well, NHS organisations can have access to that.
I think,
but non-NHS can't. I don't think.
Of course,
local government can.
Really?
I'm sure local government can, but I don't know.
Okay.
Did you want to come in, by the way?
Sorry?
Did you want to say your hand was up?
Yeah, Peter's next.
I just wanted to say, sorry, because I know this isn't a space to allocate work, Mohammed and colleagues, but I would like a short paper setting out what organisations need to provide to their analysts to be able to function as professionals using these tools, and I'd like to take it direct to the chief executives of all the ICSs in our system. So could we produce something that does that?
Can I just launch in? I think that's what we're producing as a community through the GitHub.
Great.
So we're saying what we need.
Can we then turn it into something we can take straight through the top of these organisations and try and get a collective sign up across the MDSN that it's not acceptable within the MDSN for organisations to block these things?
Yeah, and I think
alongside everything else, but I really would like to do that, especially given the national guidance on it makes it clear that making these tools available is a fundamental requirement. Yeah, so because we wrote that in it, so let's use it.
the timing for this could not be better for us because of the
Right.
Goldacre review and
But
so
just
on. So I
produce
think
that.
we can do-
I'll do what is needed with it, but I need the document.
Yep, that's an action for our technical advisory group to
Thank
work
you.
on.
Yeah.
That's it. I'm done, Rachel, unless there are any other questions. I don't want you to eat into Peter's time. You're muted.
I think Sarah, sorry, I think Sarah did have her hand up, but is but no longer. So I think we must have answered her question. Okay, great. Thanks very much for that, Mohammed. And I think we've got some really a really strong action for us to take in order to create the conditions so people can actually install our where they need to collectively, because I think we're doing it in piecemeal at the moment.
Send your teams en masse to the conference at Edgbaston, please.
Yes, that as well. Don't worry, I'll come back to that. I'll do a reminder as well to people, because there's not everybody's here. There's 700 people in the Analyst Network. We just get very important people here, but there are a few people who aren't able to make it. Okay, I'm going to hand over to Peter now, and Mohammed as well, and Simon, I think, may be contributing. He says thanks for that. So we're going to be Peter's going to be talking about something quite exciting actually, which is the National Data Science Conference, which we are designing, and I've got a slide on
Got a
this.
slide? I was going to say I haven't got one. So I'm conscious everyone's very busy and possibly is thinking that what they need, like a hole in the head, is another event that they're going to struggle to go to. But as part of this whole effort to support the professionalisation of analysis in the NHS, it seemed to us for quite a long time, looking at the world, that there isn't a platform. There are some platforms, but there isn't a really clear platform which exists to celebrate and promote analysis and data science within the NHS and its partners in local government. There's various places where you can put in applications to win awards, whether you get the award is driven by the quality of the comms that sit around your application rather than the quality of the work, etc., etc. But there isn't really an absolute focal point. There are also lots of events where the commercial sector can sell their wares. There isn't a place where we celebrate NHS analysis. We then had the Goldacre report, and Ben Goldacre, somewhere in amongst his magnum opus, suggested that a national conference would be important. So anyway, we were looking at that, and we started to get slightly cold sweats about what it might look like if it was run in a certain way. So we decided that we would make a punt. And the punt we made was to ask the 4 CSUs who cover the country whether they would be prepared to put the money up to allow us to design and set up such a national conference to celebrate analysis and data science for the NHS, a 2-day conference. And they did. And they've come up with a terrific budget. And they've asked us in the strategy unit to lead the design and organisation of this thing. We've discussed it with people like Ming Tang, who is very enthusiastic about the fact that the CSUs have stepped in to support fulfilling this national recommendation that came out of Goldacre. So we've got national support from NHS England. We've got, as you might imagine, a lot of enthusiasm and support from the think tanks who are keen to be involved. Ben Goldacre himself is thrilled that this is going to happen and is going to front it and all of that. So we're up and running, and we're planning to have the first one next year, hopefully early July, partly because we're hoping, if we can pull it off, to take on a university campus for it, and because these ideas tend to grow quite quickly, we're actually now thinking about turning it into a whole week of development activities on a university campus, with the 2-day conference as the centerpiece, but with things like NHS-R conference attached to it, the The ARCs are interested to connect, so we may have some elements to support their interests. AFA is thinking about creating an event that that would sit within that period as well. And we want to try to work towards describing the components that are on offer in that week in terms of the professional development things that they would contribute for analysts, and to make that quite structured. And it sort of goes back, I don't know whether any of you read it, but the paper we did for NHS England about 2 years ago on advancing strategic analytics, where we did suggest there should be a development week. So we're sort of trying to create that on the basis of if you build it, they will come. So and we would work, our plan is to work very closely with NHS England and others to try to build a level of expectation around the release, but around organisations allowing staff to be released to participate. And the budget we've got means that all participation will be free for NHS and local government staff, aside from travel and accommodation for those who need it. So we're at very early stages. We're putting together a design committee and advisory groups and all this sort of thing. There's some quite important design decisions we need to start thinking about. So the one thing we want to make it is we want to make it a bit more akin to an academic conference or a clinical conference. So we want to have poster opportunities for people to present posters and all this sort of thing as part of it. We're just debating the extent to which having some degree of, some element of prizes as part of that is a good or a bad thing, and the different opinions on that. So it would be really interesting to hear from this group, just as a sample, about the extent to which the possibility to get awards as part of poster presentations and so on is an added incentive, or just the fact that you've been chosen to present is enough. We will want to create lots of space for NHS analysts to showcase their work as part of this. So we will be looking for people to do that, and we will introduce some ground rules for it. So, for example, we won't showcase analysis that isn't available through open source. So things like RAP will become fundamental if people want their work to show in this type of event. So anyway, that's what we're thinking of. Mohammed, what do you want to? Mohammed will lead the design process, but what would you add to that?
Well, just to point out that the strategy unit is the new home of the NHS-R community and has been for several years now. And because the NHS-R conference has quite a high profile, actually we're left holding the baton for trying to organise this. But I want to reassure colleagues on the call, really, this is not an R conference. It is a conference for all analysts that are in the NHS and local government setting. And if anybody has any ideas that they want to share with us, just feel free to kind of let us know, really. We're definitely at the design stage, and of course we won't get everything right, but to have your voice in it, I think is really important to us.
So I've shared the screen. So we've had a couple of comments from people. So instead of, I could read them out. We haven't got that much time, but
how much time do we have left, Rachel? About 5 minutes before.
Yeah, you can take up the whole 5 minutes. That's fine. So
I'll give you a bit of warm down time, but so the point about having workshops, I think that's really crucial. So we'll work very hard to try and get workshops available as an integral part of the conference. I think a hackathon, I think that's a great idea. What we need to try and do, I think, is get problem and data and analysts together. So there's some kind of additional pieces to bring onto there. I think AFA is a key part of the landscape, and I think we would be working closely with them to kind of get the design right for this. The title's important. I think maybe that's the point that's been made in the first box. whether it's data science or operations research, or perhaps even broader, to kind of consider the notion of decision quality and decision making and decision science, really, and recognizing that analytics is a critical part of that. And absent the link to decision making, we can kind of not be in the room because we haven't made those links explicitly, I think. Are you able to scroll down a bit more? And by the way, this is Peter, do feel free to comment if there's any other a hybrid. So that's that. Yeah. So the current conference for NHS-R is hybrid, and I think we would work very hard to try and aim for a hybrid conference. But a hybrid conference does present a lot of additional technical challenges and costs. So it's something it would be ruled in by default, but the extent to which we can carry it out, there are some practical barriers, I think. Yeah. Okay, great. I'm trying to get clinical engagement with this as well. Yeah, just keep scrolling down. These are great ideas. I mean, we'll have them preserved in the Menti thing as well.
Very keen to make it attractive to clinicians who there's a big community of clinicians out there who are very interested and excited about analysis as part of their work. So I'm very keen that this is an event they feel is for them too. And
I would one of the things I'm very aware of is the use of the term data science and what it means to different people. There are definitions of what it means, and there's a couple of comments on here which don't surprise me at all, that people may feel excluded or may feel that isn't something that describes what they do. And I feel quite strongly that this conference, however we sort of design it and describe it, is very inclusive to all analysts who are data scientists or who have data science or data science approaches, whether they know it or not, as part of the work and what they do. It's not meant to be for strictly speaking, you are a data scientist, therefore you can come to this conference. So I think we're going to have to think quite carefully about how we describe it. Need to work on that.
Just scroll it a bit more. It'll definitely be free to participants, and just to stress, we're not having any commercial sponsorship for this. This is NHS staff, public sector staff, think tanks, and academics. And we're going to focus on work that they do for the NHS. I do think there'll be a sort of a set of, even if we end up with the main event being essentially face-to-face, there will be lots of associated activity that will be online, for sure.
And colleagues who've been involved with conferences and kind of like that kind of workspace, perhaps this last comment I'm reading about the National PhD Conference. So by all means, do get in touch.
Yeah.
You know, we're not. This is a kind of a servant model of leadership. We're here to serve really the community and make it work for them. So.
Yeah. Oh, please, anyone who's interested to help, who's got ideas, please get in contact.
Yeah, I think that's really important. Okay, well that's great. I think there's I feel this is going to be something that people are going to be very interested in and that they can contribute and help us design something which is very special and relevant. I've moved us on. Thanks very much everybody for coming, and I know you really wanted to come today to give us some updates, so that's really appreciated. People like to see you and hear about these things that we're involved with, and that's fantastic. I've just moved it onto a slide which tells us about Insight again. So there's a lovely picture of Bola looking very happy. She's happy because she's going to be presenting at Insight. That's why she's happy. And there's a lot of other happy people as well because they are also presenting at Insight. And we have lots of people on the programme and events that you don't actually know about yet. So that's also very exciting. No, don't forget to register if you are interested in as well the NHS-R conference. Again, face to face, you can't beat that. Seeing real people in real life, that's going to be an exciting opportunity for you to meet other analysts as well. Okay, so we are now at 12 o'clock. Let me just check just very briefly. So You've no time to ask any questions, but you've asked lots already. These are coming up in the next few huddles. Hopefully we're going to be hearing feedback on one of the MDSN analytical projects next time, and there's lots of other exciting huddles coming up very, very soon. And I really want to draw your attention just finally before we go. There are a lot of training opportunities available for you to be registering for at the moment. Some of them are they're all excellent. Some of them are a significant time commitment. So please do have a look at them now and work with your line manager to make sure that you can be afforded the time to go on these courses. So do take a look at the prospectus and the training and development webpage. So here are some of the ones which are coming up. So next week we've got doing population segmentation for your local population. Who wouldn't want to do that? That's next week. We have spaces, introduction to health economics and evaluation. You don't need to be a specialist, or that is for beginners. You need to know nothing about this subject, or just a refresher. So again, just check out some of these things. These links, you should be able to click on these links at the moment, but they're all available on the website as well. So back to the room, we've got, I'll stop sharing. We've hit 12:01, so it's now time to say goodbye. Thank you everyone for coming. Thank you, Peter, Simon and Mohammed, and we'll see you all again in a couple of weeks. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.